Hello everyone. Hope you are doing good with your studies. We are going through the chapter Glimpses of the Past from Honeydew. Up till now, we have seen whole of the chapter in 9 different parts, and I'm sure that you have written passages of 100 words in for each comic strip, in which the dialogues are mentioned and important events are mentioned in bubbles in boxes, and it clearly tells what happened after 1757, and after that we had revolt of 1857, which is also termed as first war of Indian independence. Now today we are going to go for the comprehension check. In the next video lecture, we shall be going through the grammar part of the chapter, and one more lecture will be required for the Macavity Cap by Eliot and its comprehension. That will be finishing off in a day only, in which the poem will be there and its comprehension will be there. So 3 more lectures to go and this chapter will be over. Now, comprehension of this chapter is, I've seen, as we see comprehension and working with the text, have, extensively extracted the gist of the chapter, in which, brainstorming is required. Now, 2 things are there. Firstly, it is a chapter with the fixed amount of information, and we need to fix to that. But some questions, literature, what happens, whatever is given, you have to answer from there only. But in history, what happens, you can answer from your own previous knowledge and from other sources also, apart from the textbook. But over here, we need to stick. But few of the questions have been asked, which are out of the context, but they are important, and that will be surely leaving with you some more amount of knowledge. Other thing is that when we were discussing and when you are making passages for each comic strip, you'll be having some extra knowledge and extra input, so that the passages become interesting. So let us start with it. A few of the points I have written, and what I'll do is supply you with the important points in the form of PDF, so that while writing the answer, those points must be included, so your answer becomes more attractive, more informative, and precise to the point. Let us start with it. Now, the first question is that look at the picture 1 and recall the opening lines of the original song in Hindi. Who is the singer? Who else do you see in the picture? In the first picture, we see the event of the Red Fort, which we had already discussed, in which we see Shastri ji, Indira Gandhi, Nehru ji, and Lata Mangeshkar singing "Ae Mere Watan Ke Logon," and that was the song. Okay, and that incident we have already discussed. It happened just after China War, when the morale of Indian citizens were quite down, because it was not a good experience having a confrontation with China. Though we were not aggressors, they were the aggressors. In picture 2, what do you understand by the company's superior weapons? Now in picture 2, the very first line says, with the superior weapons, the British East India Company was extending its power in 18th century India. Now, what is important over here is that Britishers had come and they had adopted imperialistic policies and colonialism just because of the fact that they were going depleting of the resources. They were having the scarce resources, so they wanted to conquer the world to get in the resources for their own industrial revolution. But industrial revolution parallelly gave rise to more better weapons. So if you can write about industrial revolution gave rise to modern machines, and modern machine gave rise to modern weapons. Another point is that Britishers were at war with French people for quite 100 years, and that was one of the major, cause behind development of good weapons. Because they fought for some 100 years, French and the British people, and that war ended by, British and American War of Independence and French Revolution. So British were ousted from America, and then French had its revolution. And when Napoleon Bonaparte rose to be, a good ruler, and but he was defeated ultimately, and then French and British, had a signature, signed the treaty where they stopped fighting. So because of this only, they had superior weapons. Superior weapons, that means the use of gunpowder was started. One thing I would just mention over here, that use of gunpowder in India was done first by Babur. Well, he came to India, he had small guns which can be put on the back of camels. Secondly, rockets were first used by Tipu Sultan. Okay, but these Britishers adopted, or Europeans adopted this from China. They found the gunpowder because first firecrackers were invented in China only some 1,000 years back. So they adopted it and then used for military use. Okay. Who is an artisan? What do you think the artisan suffered in picture 3? Now, artisan is a local craftsman. Okay, local craftsmen are called as artisans. Now, why they suffered? They suffered because Britishers forcibly took raw material from India and sent it to Britain for processing in their own machines. So British factories got their raw material, number one. Number two, they put heavy taxes and stopped artisans from making goods. So in both the ways, artisans got suffered. Firstly, the raw material got expensive. Then artisans were pressurized not to produce because they wanted their own produce, because whatever was the finished product was brought it in India. So foreign goods were brought in India and sold, and their price was also monitored as per the local market. So it was one of the thing. Now where the machines played a role over here, because they were fast, so they produced in bulk. When they produced in bulk, they required lots of raw material, so everything was taken away by the British only and supplied to Britain. And after that, when the finished goods were brought over here, Indians were forced to buy that product only. So policy of foreign goods, or policy, this was actually the behind basic policy only. Okay, why the Britishers came to India, and or for any other country, invaded any other country. The policy of colonialism. Now here I want to just mention why Gandhiji, recommended strongly the use of charkha, because if we use charkha, we weave khadi cloth and we can wear, because cotton is in abundance. In fact, your region is full of cotton. Vidarbha, cotton grows over here in bulk. It is a cotton belt in this place and Gujarat. So Gandhiji forced by, because Indians should have Indian goods only. Foreign goods should be abandoned, and therefore foreign goods were burned in bulk. But this happened after sub 70-75 years after what 1857 revolt happened. But then Indians had realized by that time that foreign goods are creating troubles for Indian artisans. Question number 4. Which picture according to you reveals the first spark of the revolt? Actually, first spark of the revolt is in picture number 7, where you find Santals having a revolution against, they were revolting and they had killed many Britishers. Santhal is a tribe of West Bengal and parts of Jharkhand and parts of Bihar. Okay, and that tribe was forced to give taxes, and the produce was not good, that much, so that they can give too much of taxes, but they were increasing the taxes. Okay, and the first thing you find in picture number 3, where company merchants are talking about taking of the crops and taking of the land, because the farmers are not going to so mention both. Firstly, first spark is Santhal revolution, but its origin, or it is the logical consequence of Picture number 3, where company merchants are talking about crops being taken away or the land being taken away forcibly. Okay, so this question number 1, 2, 3 and 4 we have finished up with. I'll be supplying you the question with the important points in the form of PDF. If here also you can note it, but I'll be supplying you with the PDF so that you can incorporate the points which are mentioned over here in your answers. Here I may be missing out 1 or 2 points, but in that particular PDF you'll find all the questions being covered. Now working with the text. Okay. The first question says, do you think Indian princes were short-sighted in their approach to the events of 1757? Now, what happened in 1757? In 1757, the incidents was, I'm just repeating it, Siraj-ud-Dawla and Mir Qasim, Mir Jafar were the uncles of Siraj-ud-Dawla, and they had altercations because they were increasing their power. Britishers were increasing their power in Fort William in Kolkata. So Siraj-ud-Dawla wanted to curtail it down. So they had invaded Fort William, and the incident of Black Hole took place. Now, instead of Black Hole, you must go for further readings in which people were gathered in a small hall, and then with the scorching heat of June of Kolkata took many lives, and few of them survived to just tell the tale of that. And then to revenge it, Robert Clive had invaded Murshidabad, and Battle of Plassey took, in which people of his own cousin and uncle took, they just betrayed the ruler, and then they were made the ruler, and then again they were also pressurized by Britishers. So it was not a good thing to happen. But what it tells that Indian princes, they were looking after themselves only. They did not look after a long term, so that a foreign ruler can easily come and take care of their kingdom and take care of all the affairs and take away all the things from them in the form of taxes, in the form of power of administration, even the army. Okay, so they were short-sighted, obviously. So your single line answer will be yes. We think that the incident of 1757, which is the Battle of Plassey, we find that Indian princes took favor of the Britishers, and in lieu of that, Britishers took away the power of administration. So they were short-sighted, and a foreign ruler established, and that is the first instance where it happened on 23rd of June 1757. On 23rd of June 1757, the Battle of Plassey happened, but the armies of their own people, uncle and Mir Qasim, Mir Jafar, they betrayed. So Murshidabad was taken away, and the first instant of rule in India by the Britishers started. How did East India Company subdue the Indian princes? The same way in 1757, what they did, they had a policy, later on it came up strongly, and they termed it divide and rule. But what were happening, they were taking advantage of the rivalries among the princely states, and they were small states with small armies. And since ages they were fighting, since the Mughal period they were fighting and having a rivalry with each other. So what did the Britishers identified these pairs of where the fighting is going on, and they supported one. When they supported one, other was obviously defeated. The one which was defeated was already obviously taken away by the Britishers. But then in the name of defeating the other ruler, the ruler which was helped by the Britishers, was also made, their affairs were also taken charge of by the British East India Company. So this is how both the states, fighting states, were under the British control, their taxes, their armies, their administration. Now the third question says, quote the words used by Raja Ram Mohan Roy to say that every religion teaches the same principles. So where Raja Ram Mohan Roy in this particular picture chapter is there in number 4 in the second box, where you find cows are of different color, but the color of their milk is same. Different teachers have different opinions, but the essence of every religion is the same. So just you can quote that particular thing by Raja Rammohan Roy. Then comes question number 4. In what ways did the British officers exploit Indians? Now, in what way they exploited? Okay, there are basically 4 ways they exploited. We will not go beyond what is given in the text, but we need to fairly cover all the parts. First is the captured provinces. They captured provinces. That means they were one way of exploiting Indians, because they had their own rules, set of rules, which was quite different and quite tougher in the degree of ruling and taxation. Okay, when they captured the kingdom in the name of the help and protection. Second was the application of or the implication of taxation policies. The taxation policies of British East India Company were too harsh and too rude. They did not look for what the produce is. They looked for their own interests. Then expensive foreign goods were imposed on Indians, and they had to take foreign goods or whatever goods produced in Britain, and they were of higher price. So Indians were exploited, and Indians artisans were discouraged. So local goods stopped. So economically, both artisans, local people, farmers, all became poorer day by day. Then comes the next question. Name these people. The ruler who had pitched battles against the British and died fighting. Now, there are many rulers who fought, okay, but since here the name is, in the last picture, in the 7th fight for the freedom, you have a picture of Kunwar Singh, okay, so you can write that Kunwar Singh had pitched equally. Pitched equally means the battle were equal, okay, maybe he had, created problems, and he was a ruler from Ara district, Ara, current Bihar. And he says that Mother Ganga, this is the last offering I am giving it to you. Actually, what happened after the Kanpur issue? Kanpur means what happened in Kanpur actually. Nana Sahib, Peshwa, and Tatya Tope were there. So there was one Wheeler, one gentleman, General British captain was Mr. Wheeler. He was very soft with Indians. So he had even married one of the Indian women, and they had some garrison over there of native infantry in Kanpur. And it was, he thought that in Kanpur we will not have any problem, because as I had already discussed in the previous chapter, in the previous video lecture, that we and the Britishers, when the first war of independence was going on, everybody had their own reasons to fight. Okay, it was not collective fight, but then it was later on shifted, whole scenario shifted to Delhi. Okay, so everybody had a reason to initiate the war, but it was against Britishers collectively. Okay, but then initiation was having their own reasons, but they were supporting each other, because they knew ultimately we have to defeat Britishers. So in Kanpur, that gentleman Wheeler could not realize that people are going against the Britishers, okay, and armies are against Britishers. He thought there's no local issue, so nothing will happen. But it happened that siege happened, and then Tatya Tope had captured the people, and then later on later on one treaty was there between Tatya Tope and the British. There was women and children be spared, and they went through Ganga. Okay, and while they were going, this Nana Sahib's army attacked over there, and many people were massacred. Britishers. Okay, so it was a British defeat, and then it happened in Sati Chora, at a place called in Ganges only, Sati Chora. And because of this, whole of this belt, Kanpur, Allahabad, and Lucknow belt, got disturbed, and too much of revolution was there. So here comes Kunwar Singh. Kunwar Singh had beaten Britishers many places, and in one place where he was going on in the river and they were crossing, the Britishers had fired, and he got his left hand injured with the bullet. And one thing was that hand got the bone got fractured, the hand got shattered. And second was that if it continued with the same thing with too much of humidity, what will happen? He will get gangrene or infection or tetanus. So and this poison will be spread in whole of the body, and then he will be no more. So what he did, he cut his hand from elbow and offered it to Ganges. So this is why that is written, I mean, last offering. And he knew that he'll die, but he did not die. This happened in the month of July. And this Kanpur incident had happened on 23rd of, exactly 100 years after 1757. It happened on 23rd of June, 1857. The siege was there and lots of tough fighting was there, though ultimately Indians were defeated, but then it had gone, substantial damage was done to the British army over there. So in retaliation, Britishers were fighting with each and everybody whosoever is supporting of a single degree also to the Indians. So Kumar Singh was supporting Indians, and he had, he was a fierce fighter. So he continued with that one hand only, and then it happened in the month of July, and he led many operations, but ultimately, and even Azamgarh was captured, which is nearby Lucknow, was by him only. But later on, it happened that in the month of April, he died fighting. So he had given a good fight to Britishers. So Kumar Singh of Bihar, the person who wanted to reform society, Raja Ram Mohan Roy, the person who recommended the introduction of English education in India. English education was recommended by Lord Macaulay, because they wanted to create some people to work for them, and clerks were, so white collar jobs were created because of that. Two popular leaders who led the revolt. We have got many leaders who had led the revolt. We can, and in the previous video lecture, you must have taken the screenshot. So there were many leaders: Rani of Jhansi, then Bakht Khan, then Tatya Tope, then Nana Sahib Peshwa, then Kumar Singh, then Shahi brothers of Odisha. Their list is long, so any of the two you can just write and mention. In a line or two, you should mention what they did and from where they were. Mention the following: two examples of social practices prevailing then. You see, if we not go beyond this, there were many social practices, untouchability, and many others were there. But then two social practices which were really against, the modern times or broad-minded this thing, where firstly, which has been talked about in this particular chapter. One was the Sati Pratha. Sati means, and when the husband dies, the wife is put on the same pyre where husband is being cremated. Okay, that was one wrong practice. Then second was boycott of widow. Boycott of widow, because this widow remarriage was has been recommended over here. So that was one of the things which was abolished officially, legally by the Britishers, because British only formed the rule at that time. And widows actually in India, what happened, either they were made sati, or they were left on the ghats of and religious places like Mathura or Allahabad, okay, or Banaras even, and they led a life of abject penury over there. And this was the tradition, leaving them at the holy places, and it happened in whole of the Ganga and Yamuna. You'll find all the holy places in the ghats, and whatever handful things, alms they got, they begged and then filled their tummy. So this is how they living, okay. And nobody even used to go near to them, or nobody used to see them when any religious function or religious things are going to be solemnized. So this is why the boycott of widow was a wrong practice. Then we have the next question: two oppressive policies of Britishers. There were many, but two we will be mentioning, whatever is given in the text. Regulation Act 3, in which Regulation 3 Act was passed, in which anybody can be put behind the bars without the trial, and just on the basis of suspicion, and then he used to continue with the trial, and the end of the life was there in the gaol itself. Then we have got doctrine of lapse. This was also not a good policy, and it was policy biased in the favor of Britishers, the British East India Company. Then next is, we have two ways in which common people suffered. Common people suffered in the form of taxation. And then we have got the foreign goods, okay, and they were very much expensive. So British East India Company bound the Indians to purchase foreign goods. One more reason over here is that East India Company officers were corrupt. Okay, because nobody wants to come, leaving home and traveling thousands of nautical miles and coming over in India. So the officers who were corrupt and not suitable in Britain used to be appointed by British company used to appoint those officers, and it used to send them over here. And when they came over here, they had their own vested interests, so they had their own companies also formed, and they were getting richer day by day. So this is what the plight was. So they were pressurizing the locals to purchase their own goods. So in this way, they were also getting benefited. So these were the four reasons of the discontent that led 1857 War of Independence. Okay, four reasons. There are many reasons are there which we have already discussed, but to name few, okay, you can find you can divide into two. Okay, the immediate reasons and long-term reasons. Long-term were their wrong taxation policy. Second, you can write foreign goods were encouraged and Indian artisans were discouraged. Thirdly, you can write about the this thing, these two are the main, and then you can write incursion of British education system into Indian system, so that Indian culture was demolished. Fourthly, you can write, since Indian tradition were changed by removing sati and widow remarriage, Indians thought that their culture is going to get spoiled. So these were the long-term reasons. And immediate reason, you can quote that immediately what happened, the doctrine of lapse was applied in Awadh, which was wrong, because earlier the policy was, their own policy was there, they only framed the policy to capture or to take over the administration where rightful heir is not there. But then later on, they applied it to Awadh, so it can be the immediate reason. And second was the introduction of Lee Enfield rifles with the greased pouch of gunpowder. So that greased was of animal fat, but nobody knew. Some people told that it is a cow fat, somebody told it is a boar fat. So nobody knew. So both Hindus and Muslims had a serious issues against that tearing with the mouth, because it is a holy thing, and not to tear should not be should not be touched with the mouth, whatever the grease it is having. So that was then it spread. The mutiny spread even to barracks of Meerut. So it started from Barakpur in Kolkata and then spread to. So these were the immediate reasons you can quote. So in this way, it will be covering everything. So this is how we just write the answers. I'll be supplying with some points, whatever are written on the board, so that things become easier for you. Answers will not be written in full, only points will be there. Okay, in the next we are going to see about the grammar part of it and the comprehension of the McAvity and other things. Okay, so next will be your grammar part. Thank you.